In the late summer of 1590, an English ship dropped anchor off the coast of North America, and a man named John White stepped onto a beach he had not seen in 3 years. Somewhere beyond the dunes was a small wooden fort, a handful of homes, and more than 100 people he had left behind. His daughter was among them. So was his infant granddaughter, the first English child ever born on American soil. White had crossed an ocean at war to reach them. What he found when he stepped past the tree line would become one of the strangest unanswered questions in American history. There was no fire, no voices, no sign of struggle, just silence and a single word carved into a wooden post. Nobody has ever fully explained what that word meant or where the people who carved it actually went. More than 400 years later, historians, archaeologists, and amateur investigators are still chasing the answer. Over 100 men, women, and children seem to vanish in the span of 3 years, in a land with no roads out, no ships of their own, and nowhere obvious to hide. There were no mass graves, no wreckage, no bodies at all. And the deeper you look into the story, the stranger it gets, because the evidence doesn't point to one clear answer. It points to several, and for 4 centuries, nobody has been able to prove which one is true. This isn't some forgotten footnote buried in a textbook. It's often called America's oldest unsolved case, taught in classrooms, chased by treasure hunters, and argued over by professional historians who still don't fully agree with each other. And unlike a lot of centuries-old mysteries, new physical evidence keeps surfacing every few years, which means the story you think you know may already be incomplete by the time you finish watching this. To understand how over 100 people could disappear without a trace, you have to go back to why they were there in the first place, in a moment when England was a small, anxious kingdom trying to survive next to the most powerful empire on earth. By the 1580s, Spain controlled a vast American empire built on gold, silver, and terror. England had nothing to match it. Queen Elizabeth I needed a foothold in the New World, both to challenge Spanish power and to give English ships a base for raiding Spanish treasure fleets. The man she trusted to build that foothold was Sir Walter Raleigh, a courtier, adventurer, and gambler with the Queen's favor. Raleigh never set foot in America himself. Instead, he financed expeditions and sent others to do the work, hoping to claim land, resources, and glory in the Queen's name. In 1584, Raleigh's scouts landed on the coast of what is now North Carolina and returned with glowing reports of fertile land and a friendly welcome from the indigenous people living there. It sounded like paradise. In 1585, Raleigh sent a larger group, mostly soldiers, to build a military outpost on a small island called Roanoke. It was meant to be a base of operations, not a permanent settlement. This first colony almost immediately ran into trouble. The English were unprepared to grow their own food and depended heavily on the local Croatoan people, led by a man named Wingina. At first, relations were workable. The English had crossed an ocean expecting easy wealth, imagining gold, the way Spain had found it further south. Instead, they found sandy soil, harsh winters, and a growing dependence on people they had come to rule rather than rely on. That imbalance bred resentment on both sides, and as English demands grew and suspicion deepened, the relationship collapsed. In the spring of 1586, the colony's leader, Ralph Lane, ordered a preemptive strike against Wingina, killing him. Days later, an English fleet under Sir Francis Drake happened to arrive off the coast, fresh from raiding the Caribbean. With relations with the local population in ruins and supplies running low, the colonists made a decision that would matter enormously a year later. They abandoned the island and sailed home with Drake's fleet. A small detachment of men was left behind shortly after to hold England's claim to the land. When the next group of colonists arrived, they would find only a single skeleton where that detachment had been. Nobody knew, and still doesn't know for certain, exactly how that first small group met their end. Undeterred, Raleigh tried again in 1587, and this time, the mission was different. Instead of soldiers, he sent families. John White led a new group of 117 men, women, and children, intending to settle further north, in the Chesapeake Bay area. where the land was better suited to farming. But the ship's pilot, a Portuguese privateer named Simon Fernandez, refused to sail them any further and forced the colonists ashore at Roanoke instead, the site of the failed earlier colony. It was already late in the season. There was no time to relocate. The decision, made by a man with his own agenda, would trap over 100 people on an island that had already turned hostile once before. The settlers rebuilt what they could, but tensions with nearby indigenous communities resurfaced almost immediately. Within days of landing, one of the colonists, George Howe, was killed while out alone gathering crabs. Fear spread through the camp. And yet, in the middle of this uncertainty, something extraordinary happened. On August 18th, 1587, White's daughter, Eleanor Dare, gave birth to a baby girl. They named her Virginia, after the new land itself. She was the first English child ever born in the Americas, and her birth became a small point of hope inside a colony that badly needed one. That hope didn't last. Supplies were dwindling. Tensions with local tribes remained unresolved, and the colonists convinced White, against his own wishes, to sail back to England for reinforcements and supplies. He agreed, believing he would return within a few months. He said goodbye to his daughter and granddaughter, not knowing it would be the last time he ever saw them. What happened next had nothing to do with Roanoke at all, and everything to do with a war thousands of miles away. In 1588, the Spanish Armada, a massive invasion fleet, sailed against England. Queen Elizabeth ordered every seaworthy English ship pressed into national defense. White was refused permission to sail. He eventually managed to book passage on 2 small vessels, but the ship's crews, more interested in plunder than in a rescue mission, attacked a French vessel along the way, were attacked in return, and were forced to limp back to England, badly damaged, without ever reaching America. It would be nearly 3 full years before White finally returned to Roanoke, a delay he never wanted and could not prevent. When White's ship finally reached the island in August of 1590, on his granddaughter's 3rd birthday, he expected to find a weary but surviving colony. Instead, he found nothing. The fort had been dismantled, not destroyed by violence, but taken apart deliberately, as though the colonists had planned their departure. His own belongings, buried for safekeeping before he left, had been dug up and ransacked. His books torn apart, his armor rusted through from exposure. There were no bodies, no signs of a battle. No blood. Carved into a wooden post was a single word, Croatoan, and on a nearby tree, just the first 3 letters, C-R-O. Before White had left 3 years earlier, he and the colonists had agreed on a signal. If they were forced to leave the island for any reason, they would carve their destination into a tree or post. And if they were leaving under attack or in distress, they would also carve a cross above it, a distress symbol they could not miss. There was no cross. Whatever had happened, the colonists seemed to want White to know they had left on their own terms and that they had gone somewhere specific. That word, Croatoan, was not a mystery in itself. It was the name of a nearby island, roughly 50 miles south, home to a native community closely allied with the English, including a man named Manteo, who had traveled to England and back and had remained a steady friend to the colonists throughout both expeditions. It seemed like the answer was right there, carved in plain wood. White wanted to sail south immediately to search for his family, but a storm rolled in, his ship's anchor cables snapped, and his captain refused to risk the crossing. White was forced to turn back to England without ever setting foot on Croatoan Island. He would spend years trying to organize another expedition. He never got the chance. He died without ever learning what had become of his daughter, his granddaughter, or the rest of the colony. For over 400 years, historians have tried to fill in what White never got to find out, and the leading theories tell very different stories. The first and simplest theory is starvation or disease, that the colonists, cut off from supplies and struggling to farm unfamiliar land, slowly died out. It's a grim possibility, but it doesn't fit the evidence. Starvation doesn't dismantle a fort and carry away every last body. It doesn't leave a calm, deliberate message carved into wood. If disease or famine had wiped out the colony, White should have found graves, or at least chaos. He found neither. The second theory points to Spain. Spanish forces were actively hunting for English settlements along the coast, worried about a rival foothold near their shipping routes. Spanish ships did search the region in 1588, looking specifically for an English colony, but their own expedition records show they searched the Chesapeake area and never actually located Roanoke. If Spain had found and destroyed the colony, it's the kind of victory Spanish officials would have proudly documented. No such record exists. The third theory is a violent attack by a hostile indigenous group, and this one is more complicated than the others. Years later, when English colonists founded Jamestown in 1607, some reported hearing that the powerful Chief Powhatan claimed to have ordered an attack on English settlers living among a tribe near the Chesapeake Bay, killing them shortly before the Jamestown colonists arrived. If true, it's possible some Roanoke colonists had moved toward Chesapeake and were killed there, but the account is secondhand, reported years after the fact, and historians remain divided on how much weight to give it. It's a real possibility, not a proven fact. The fourth theory is the one the evidence points to most directly, that the colonists moved to Croatoan Island, exactly as the carved word suggested, joining the community of their longtime ally, Manteo. The signal system, the lack of a distress cross, the calm dismantling of the fort, all of it lines up with a planned relocation rather than a disaster. And this leads to the fifth theory, the one that has gained the most traction among modern researchers, that the colonists didn't just move to Croatoan, they integrated into it, and possibly into other nearby indigenous communities as well, becoming part of the population rather than remaining a separate English settlement. It's a theory built not on speculation, but on a slow accumulation of physical evidence. That hunger for a clean answer has also produced outright fabrication. In the 1930s, a series of engraved stones surfaced, supposedly carved by Eleanor Dare herself, describing the colonists' final fate in dramatic detail. Most were later exposed as an elaborate hoax, though a small corner of the historical community still debates the authenticity of the very first stone. It's a useful reminder of just how badly people have wanted closure on this story. Closure, the actual evidence, still refuses to fully provide. That evidence didn't fully emerge until the 21st century, and when it did, it reshaped the entire investigation. In 2012, researchers at the First Colony Foundation were studying John White's original 1,585 map of the region, held at the British Museum, when conservators noticed something strange using X-ray and infrared imaging. Hidden beneath a patch on the map, invisible to the naked eye for over 400 years, was a small symbol, shaped like a fort, marking a specific location inland, far from Roanoke Island itself. Archaeologists began excavating at that site, now called Site X, near the Albemarle Sound, and uncovered English pottery and tools dating to the right period, mixed with evidence of indigenous habitation. It suggested that at least some colonists may have moved inland long before White's return, to a location deliberately hidden on the map itself, perhaps to protect it from Spanish eyes. At almost the same time, archaeologists excavating on Hatteras Island, the historical location of Croatoan, uncovered 16th century English artifacts, a signet ring, gun parts, a broken rapier, fragments of slate writing tablets, scattered among Native American tools and pottery, rather than separated into their own distinct English layer. That detail matters enormously. If the colonists had simply been captured or killed, their belongings would likely be found isolated as trophies or discarded goods. Instead, the English items were mixed directly into the daily life of the Croatoan community, suggesting the colonists weren't prisoners. They were neighbors, and quite possibly family, adding another layer to the mystery. English explorers who passed through the region more than a century later, in the early 1700s, documented indigenous communities along the coast who reportedly had gray eyes and who claimed their ancestors could once speak from a book, a possible folk memory of English literacy passed down through generations. Some indigenous communities in the region, including the Lumbee people of North Carolina, maintain oral traditions today connecting their ancestry, in part, to the lost colonists. Historians treat these traditions with genuine respect, while also noting that genealogy across 4 centuries is difficult to confirm with certainty. So what actually happened to the lost colony of Roanoke? Here is what can be said with confidence. The colonists were not massacred where they stood. They left Roanoke Island deliberately, likely in small groups, over time, rather than all at once. The word Croatoan was not a cry for help. It was a message left by people who expected, and perhaps hoped, that John White would understand it and follow. The strongest current evidence suggests that at least some of the colonists relocated to Croatoan Island and lived among Manteo's people, while others may have moved inland toward the location marked secretly on White's own map. Over time, through marriage, adoption, and daily life, many of them likely became part of the indigenous communities that took them in. What cannot be said with confidence is a single, complete, universally accepted answer. There is no smoking gun, no mass grave, no final document that closes the case. Different pieces of evidence point toward different partial truths, and the full picture may involve several of these explanations happening at once, to different groups of people, in different places, at different times. Perhaps that's the real reason this story has endured for over 4 centuries, in a way that few other historical mysteries have. It isn't just about disappearance. It's about what happens when 2 very different peoples are forced into contact, dependency, conflict, and eventually, coexistence. And how easily that story can be erased from the official record while surviving quietly in the ground, in a family's oral history, and in the eyes of their descendants. John White spent the rest of his life haunted by a single carved word, and by a question he never got to answer. Today, we have more evidence than he ever had. Pottery buried under 16th century soil, hidden symbols on a 400-year-old map, and living communities whose stories may stretch back to that vanished colony. And still, we can't say for certain what became of every single person who once called that small island home. In a country that has been built and rebuilt again and again by people crossing oceans in search of a new life, Roanoke may be the first version of a story that has never really stopped repeating itself. Arrival, hardship, disappearance into a new identity, and a past that gets quietly rewritten in the process. Maybe the deepest lesson of Roanoke isn't found in whatever finally happened to those colonists. It's found in how much of history disappears not through fire or violence, but through simple silence, through records never kept, and stories never written down, until only a single carved word remains to prove that anyone was ever there at all.